and welcome back to another amazing episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. My name is Bernadette Desir, and I'm your host. And joining me today is Sadie. How are you, Sadie?
So good. So great to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation so much.
Me too. You've been on the podcast once, and just so everyone knows, this is a marathon on adoption. And Sadie, you're an adoptee, and I'm an adoptee, and I just can't wait to get this conversation going. But before we start, can you give us a little glimpse of who you are and what it is that you do, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, my name is Saidi Bess. I'm the founder of Sacred Sensual Alchemy, and I am just super passionate about super passionate about supporting us all to be in healthier sexual expression and sensual expression, and more connected with our bodies, having those amazing, passionate, loving connections that we truly long for with ourselves, first and foremost, and then with another, should we choose to. Self-love, self-love, self-love. I just can't say it enough. Everything in our outer world is expressing to us, reflecting back what's in our inner world. So it's really going on that healing journey, healing what we need to around our sexuality and sensuality and the way that we connect with our bodies and connecting with the divine, because we are the divine, and it's just such an important piece to me. So yeah, everything I do is about that. I offer a number of one-on-one energy healing sessions, sound healing, pilgrimages to sacred sites on the planet, programs, so much to support us in this process. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So let's get this show started. So, Sadie, what is your connection to adoption? You're an adoptee. Take us through some of your journey and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was put up for adoption at birth. So that's just all I've ever known. And my adopted family, my mother, they were always very open with me about that. So I feel like I've just always known that I was adopted. Some people, don't know for some time. Everyone's story is so different, right? So they felt it was right to tell me from the beginning. So I've always known that, which was uh, yeah, we never know how we're going to relate to these things, right? For me, that just always felt like, well, why? What was wrong with me? Why didn't my mother want me, right? So that's how I took it. I didn't take it the other way. It could have been like, oh, yay, this other family wanted me really bad. And and I think they
Yeah.
tried to say that, but that's not how it felt for me. I just felt abandoned, rejected, very confused. I just couldn't understand what I had done for my mother to not want me. So that was my story. That was and I just really embodied that and rocked it out and took it to heart that I was broken, flawed, not wanted. I just very recently have been writing through journaling about my experience with women, because it's not really necessarily been a safe place for me. And when this is a coach that I'm working with, she's like, here's, gave me some journal prompts, like, let's move into this. And what I came down to at the very end, I was writing, and you know how things just come out, and what are my beliefs about women? And the last word, the last sentence I wrote was that I am disposable.
Mhm.
And that hit so hard. I'd never used those words before, and I'd never like looked at it that way. And I just sat and I stared at that for a long time. And I was just like, whoa. And how that has played out throughout so much of my life, and my difficulty bonding with others. Because apparently after you are put up for adoption and they take you from your mother, this is the practice back then in the 70s when I was born. They put me into a foster situation with a foster couple or family. And I stayed there for, I don't know, a couple of days. I've heard different stories. I used to think it was 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a different story in the family. So, but recently my father said, no, I think it was like a few days. But regardless, you get taken from your mother, then you go into that situation, and then your parents come and take you from them again. So at this point, you're like, you're just broken. You don't know who to trust. You don't know what to hold on to. And so I think I just really shut down. I just really didn't know what to do with myself. So
Yeah.
my my adoptive mother said I just used to cry all the time. I think I was just in some really heavy grief and confusion,
Hmm.
um and that played out through, the first half of my life, through, a lot of like, how do I cope with this? There was self-soothing through drugs and alcohol, and just
Hmm.
horribly low self-esteem because, again, I thought something's wrong with me. My mother didn't want me, and just, I spent a lot of time looking for her and searching for her and thinking she was going to come back to get me, and she didn't. So,
Yeah.
now I'm in a very different place around all of that. But when I was younger, I certainly didn't have tools or skills or know how to cope with any of this. And nobody understood, again, back in that time period, babies didn't have feelings. They just were like this blank canvas. And so nobody understood the grief and the pain, the loss that I was going through. So they didn't know how to support me around, why was I crying all the time? Why was I so emotional, so sensitive? Go to your room, be quiet. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just, so I kind of self-destructed, and I was very angry. After being sad and just going through grief, then I moved into a lot of anger at the world, and the universe and God and source and everything, just, so it didn't go well, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing. As you're sharing, I'm like, yeah, yeah, this applies. Me too. Me too.
yeah,
And that's the power of us sharing our stories because it's a ripple effect and it can impact and affect other people in so many positive ways. And
yeah,
may I say, everything you've shared, I've experienced as an adoptee. Maybe other adoptees have experienced it too. And that's why I wanted to talk about this
yeah,
because there's so many, I call them big emotions when I'm talking to my son, big feelings that I'm experiencing. I don't know what they are specifically, and I don't understand how to process them. I
yeah,
just go back to rage, anger, and feeling rejected.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's
That
rough.
that was a huge part of my journey for sure. And then, eventually, getting onto a spiritual path and connecting with, something much, I was going to say much bigger than myself, but connecting with different parts of myself, or understanding there was a much bigger picture and that it wasn't just all about that. And that was very helpful for me to be able to reframe it. And I know we talked about this in our previous podcast, but for me, coming to the realization that for me, I feel that we all come in and choose these experiences that we're going to have in this lifetime, for whatever reason, for whatever we're going to learn from that. And I feel once I kind of, took that on and I tried that on, just it felt so right to me. I was just like, some part of me knew, like, yes, I did choose this. I did choose this. And now what? Now, what was I learning from this? What am I learning from this? Because this continues on. Just as I said, I was just journaling about it, right? This one doesn't go away. I don't.
No, no. Yeah, it stays and it stays and it hurts and it
Yeah.
heals. At times, we adoptees, we don't have words to describe what we're feeling. And it depends who we're getting help from. Some doctors are very quick to medicate the pain of adoptees without understanding the root cause of it. And sometimes, even if we explain it, we do feel that people still don't get it.
Yeah, yeah. This is why I got so into grief support and bereavement, and because once I understood that my whole life had been one of grief, it was a huge loss that I had been trying to cope with
Mhm.
and did not know that. I just thought, there was many things, but I didn't realize, like, oh my gosh, I was grieving a loss that just it just kept compounding, and I just kept making it worse by certain choices I was making in my life. And so yeah, then understanding that it was grief gave me a way to start working with it and start dealing with it and start addressing it. And yeah, and I got really passionate about supporting other people through their own grief, and especially around non-death related loss like this. It's a disenfranchised grief or ambiguous loss, because it's like, is she dead? Is she alive? I don't know. Is my
Yeah,
mother still out there? Does
yeah.
she want me? Does she try to, would she like contact? How do you organize all these things? And people are like, oh, are you going to try to find your mother? And it's just like, you don't even know what you're asking right there, how
Yeah,
complicated that is. It's
yeah,
just like that's going to fix it somehow. It's just like, well, what happens when you do that and get rejected again, right? Because that happens to people. And then, I mean, it's just so complicated. And then, yeah, how do you deal with the anger towards that person that you might want to express? And
yeah.
so it always felt like opening up a really big can of worms, and the fear of a second
Mm,
rejection was like way too big. I mean, I used to search for her, and then as I got older, I started realizing like that's because I wanted her to come back and save me, right? I just wanted it
mm,
to be fixed. But
yeah,
once I understood, more, and as I grew older, I realized like that could be a really not healthy situation, or not
it is.
a good
Yeah.
plan. So and now I'm at that place where it doesn't even occur to me anymore. I've done so much healing around it. It's just like she wasn't meant to be in my life. I wasn't meant to have that situation of a family in that way. And that's, again, that's what I chose to come in for. And I can choose now to look at the lessons, to understand why I might have chosen that for myself. What is the wisdom of that? What is that opening up for me? And there's really so much compassion and empathy I have for others now. And again, the trajectory and the life path, and
Mhm.
yeah, just a bigger understanding of so much, because I
Yeah.
don't have that anchor, so I've had to find anchors in different ways and really strengthen myself in really amazing ways,
Mhm.
so it's
Mhm.
it's yeah. and
Mhm.
and I know adoption goes through that. Adoption is its own flavor. There's many other flavors, out
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
So we all come in with something to experience something. So yeah. But
Thank
it
you
is
for sharing. Yeah,
yeah.
earlier on during our conversation here, you mentioned that your parent or parents were very open, about your journey that you were adopted at birth. What advice would you have for people whose parents are not open to them? Because there's a lot of secrecy when it comes to family, which should be the opposite way, but it's not. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is really that's such a challenging question that I've thought of
Yeah.
many times. Is it better to know or to not know? Right? Would my life have been different? Would I have felt the same, like that I didn't belong there in my family? Would I have always felt that anyway? Because as an energy healer, I understand energy, right? And there would be, I would think there would be something off there, and maybe if you didn't have any understanding of why, like the knowledge,
Mhm.
um, you might feel a little crazy, and why don't you fit in with your family or
Mhm.
something? But then it could be the other way too, where you fit great and you don't need to know, right? So, but I guess just in integrity, right? You should probably tell people, so, and let them make that decision. And that's part of the responsibility of adopting a child. You need to have gone through all of this. You need to understand. Need to have gone on your own um, journey and understand why you're doing this, and why wouldn't you tell a person, I don't know. That's it's probably not so black and white, right? There's going
Yeah.
to be different shades. So, um, but I would think probably best practices is to tell a person, so
Yeah.
they know the truth of their own history, their own story, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people I'd rather be hurt with the truth than a lie. If I
Yeah,
if I get hurt with the truth, Over time, as I grow and evolve as a being, I will find the space to forgive you.
Yeah.
If it's with a lie, I can forgive you, but the pain of the denial or the betrayal, all the lies, it will be very different.
That's a huge lie to keep. You're right. So even though it might want to come from a good place, that's never okay. That is a very heavy energy. So yeah, that's I'm gonna have to take back what I said. I think, yeah. Yeah, the really people have a right to know. They absolutely do. So um
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah. That's a heavy thing to keep in a family, right? Yeah, that's not good. That's not
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
I agree. Yeah. So you've been in the foster care system, you mentioned.
No, I mean it was only for a couple of days apparently.
Oh, okay.
One story I heard was 6 weeks, but then my dad recently said he remembered it only being a few days that I was there. So I don't know what the purpose of that specific practice was at that time, but again, I'm grateful that we're at a different consciousness now, and I don't think that's still happening, but um, what we know about bonding and the importance of those first moments is
Mhm.
really that's
Yeah.
not that was not a good idea, whatever they were doing. But yeah, so it was a very short period of time, but I mean I think enough to do a fair amount of damage.
Yeah, yeah. I've
Yeah.
been in the foster care system, and
Okay.
most people don't know that I've been, unless they're absolutely close to me to know that.
Right.
And oh boy, it's just was and still is a very messy situation, my story. And it's like trauma after trauma after trauma, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, in your opinion, how can adoptees and adoptive parents heal together?
Ooh, I think that grief piece is huge in acknowledging and recognizing the loss. And, again, like I said previously, it used to be that people thought babies didn't have any feelings, but that's just not true, right? We come in, very intelligent. We know. Very feeling. We're very feeling creatures. But yeah, to acknowledge the loss, not pretend it's not a thing. And I've heard even some adoptees that don't realize they've lost anything, or they're just like, no, I'm good, everything's happy and I'm fine. And I just have a hard time imagining that to be true, and maybe I don't get to decide how other people relate to their experiences, of course, but I feel like there's some exploration and some self-reflection that needs to happen there, and an exploration of grief and yeah, and again, acknowledging, I know I've said that a few times, but it's just a really important key piece. And communication and opening up the lines of communication and allowing space and not being, so sensitive. There's like a lot of people wanting to protect each other from, pain or from truths. And that's just, like you said, a lot of secrecy in families and not wanting to have those conversations and but just being able to be open about it and appreciate that just because perhaps an adoptee, a child is experiencing pain and grief and loss, it doesn't reflect on you, as the parent. It doesn't reflect on your their ability to love and care for you, right? And accept nourishment from you and connect with you and bond with you. But to pretend that that is not a reality is just it's doing a disservice to everybody. So, you know, really, really, this is why like adopting is you've got to be really freaking strong in yourself to hold space for that child that you're bringing in, and really and get the hell out of your own crap, right? If that's where you're at, that is not okay. You made the decision to bring a child into your world. You need to be there for them and give them the tools and 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 information and love and space to process in whatever way they're going to. And it might get really freaking messy, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Sadie, what is one experience about your journey that you wish more people knew, you wish more people would understand or talked more about?
I know I sound like a broken record, but it's that grief piece, you know. It was a
Mm,
huge, huge, huge loss that I just had no tools or skills to cope with. I did not know what was going on, right? And
mhm.
so and yeah, again, people think like, oh, you were adopted. Yay, that's awesome. You know, not really thinking about what they're saying. And I was just, this is so funny, not funny, but I was just at a street fair recently in Palm Springs, and there was a little kennel of puppies that were there. They were trying to find homes for the puppies, you know, adopt them out. And I saw them all playing with their brothers and sisters. And it's just like, okay, that's great. They're trying to get these animals adopted, but they're losing their family, right? They're going to go off and lose all their people, you know? And people don't think about that with animals too. I feel like my puppy, when I got her, this was years back, you know, she was bummed out when she left her family. She seemed really very quite sad. And, you know, that's just, I think, yeah, people just really need to recognize that more. There's a nice aspect, but really it's a huge loss. It's a huge loss, and it needs to be recognized more by society. I know some of your story, and that one has always just made me an absolute crazy person that you could take somebody from their entire culture and their country and their family and put them in a new place and expect that it's going to go okay, you know, and just like and you know, and people celebrate that like, yay, that's great and glamorize it and just like what?
Yeah.
Could you even put yourself in that situation? How would that work for you if we just came and picked you up and completely displaced you from everything and and you're going to be happy? Like, whoa, that's
Yeah.
yeah, people really need to understand more about what's going on with this process and what the real pain and terror and trauma of it all, you know?
Yeah, yeah. There's still stuff about my family that I don't know. I don't even know what to call them, but to make the conversation make sense. Because
Yeah.
my mom passed. My bio dad, my adoptive dad, excuse me, is alive somewhere, and I've been completely cut off from any adoptive family. So. There's lots of secrets, lots of anger, lots of things I don't know, I don't understand. My message, for adopt people who want to adopt, don't do it because it's cute, because so and so did it, and you want to be cool like them,
Yeah.
without understanding what they're taking on,
Yeah.
because it's a lot. It's
Yeah.
a lot to carry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I know people just, and that was the thing. My mother, you know, that adopted me, she just always wanted to adopt. That was just her dream. It was a thing for her. And she just wasn't anywhere near capable of dealing with the reality of me not entering in all happy about it. You know, I came in very, very upset, and she didn't know how to deal with that. So that's what I mean. Like people need to understand more about the reality of this experience and be prepared for a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. I won't call them problems. I don't really like that word, but a lot of challenges. So let's just say it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what are some of the many ways that society could shift their thinking? And there's a lot of stigma around adoption. That's what I'm gonna say. There's stigma around everything. I find that often things that people don't understand, they put a label on it And
Yeah.
therefore, because there's a label, that's what it is. That's what they believe,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought there. I asked you a question, but I don't remember what I said.
Yeah, you were asking me something about society, what
Oh yeah,
cons
yeah, society. Yeah. Um, how can we as adoptee um teach society about our stories without shame and guilt?
Yeah, no, I trust that I came in here for this experience, and what I've learned from it is really interesting and ultimately very empowering. But uh yeah, so I don't mean to shame my mother for not being able to take care of me. I
Yeah.
understand very well that she had good intentions. And again, that's why I think education is so important. I think having these types of conversations, none of this stuff was going on back in the 70s when I was adopted. We didn't have the internet. We didn't, again, the consciousness around babies. It wasn't even a thing to think that there would be an issue with this. So no guilt, no shame. People thought it was the best thing. And I've often wondered, I have no idea what kind of situation I was born into. What would my life have looked like had I stayed with my biological parents? Maybe that would have been a real freaking nightmare. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
knows? I don't. So I have to trust that as well. Um, Again, I just didn't deal very well with my grief and such, and the people around me didn't have the tools either. So, but yeah, so having these conversations, educating people, and just bringing a new consciousness, because people are surprised when they talk to me, and they're like, "Oh wow, yeah, you were adopted." I'm like, "No, actually, it was really, really amazing." And they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I never thought about that."
Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's glamorized. It's like all
Mm.
yeah, happy family. And it's like, no, where they're thinking more about the parents they're so excited that the parents get to adopt, and it's just like, ooh, okay. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
education, discussion, not shying away from it, not I don't want to stay stuck in my story, and I'm not. I've done a lot of healing, and I don't walk around every day now like upset in that, and that was my life for a very long time.
Mm.
So but I think, but I will always engage in these conversations because I think it's very important for people to know and understand a much bigger picture and a much bigger view of adoption and what yeah, the realities of it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. What are some triggers that you had or currently have, when it comes to adoption that you're working on?
The unwanted piece, just not being wanted, that really was a thing for me. And the worthiness piece, the not feeling worthy, not feeling and that's deep. That's deep, deep, deep one now. And I know we all have that. We all have an issue with self-love and worthiness at some different levels. So it seems to just be part of our human journey, right? It's like a
Mhm.
trigger because we've all got our own flavor of it. So I just keep working through that. And um, I definitely still get triggered sometimes by feeling like I wasn't wanted. And I can very quickly catch myself and go, okay,
Yeah.
that's the one view of it, right? That's one,
Mhm.
but I don't get lost in it anymore. It used to, I mean, I was in it for years, like again, like the drug addiction. I was just way deep into it. Like that was the way I coped with it and dealt with it. Now something comes up and I'm like, yes, there's that, and it's not my story anymore. And I have a different story now. I have a new narrative that serves me much better. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, the pain is still there. It's real. It's just not as heavy and overwhelming as it was. I don't have to again get lost in it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I have very similar experience. It's like looking at the sky and just clouds passing by. Those are the kind of emotions how I experience them. I see it, I recognize it, it's there, and I just let it go by because I think in our pain and trauma, there are so much lessons for us to learn.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's challenging, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it is challenging, right? And yeah, and it's still it still goes on. I mean, regardless of the healing. And I think again, that's like the human journey, right? We just come in to have challenges and learn how to move through them, right? And it gets easier as we go and we don't have to attach to them so much. And um it's so much about perspective as well. How do we um yeah, how are we relating to our challenges? Is it a big like poor me kind of thing, or is it just like, okay, here's that thing again, and now how do I move through this, right? Because it is part of our journey. So the more we can, kind of step back away from it a little bit and get some distance without getting so mired in it and so like, ugh, the more um yeah, the easier it gets because yeah, the challenges don't stop. The emotions don't stop, right? I mean, but yeah, how do we relate to them, right? So yeah.
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 Yeah. So, have you always been open about your adoption story? If so, have you talked to other adoptees? Or you plugged into different groups or communities?
Yeah, no, I'm open about it, for sure. Yeah, I don't feel like any shame around that necessarily. So, um, and for a while when I was going to school to be a social worker, my second degree is in social work, and I got really passionate about supporting other adoptees, and I created a little support group and started connecting with people. And then I think we talked about this on our last episode as well. People were really um kind of stuck in the victim consciousness place again and just and yeah, dealing with a lot of anger and it was more um uh, again I'm not a big I don't like the word problem, but it was very problem oriented versus solution oriented. And so that just wasn't where I was at in my journey anymore. I didn't really want to stay in that anger of it and stay in the poor me kind of thing. I'd been through that. I spent a lot of time there,
Mhm.
right? So how do we move beyond that? So, and then I tried to get engaged with a couple of other groups as well, but have found that it tends to be kind of more that, versus the solution and how do we move forward now, right? So and I freaking get it. I get the pain, I get the anger, I absolutely do, but I don't want to stay in it anymore. I don't. And of course I dip back in on occasion and because it arises and there it is again, but I don't get mired in it and just and feed it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
What kind
yeah,
of sad music can we listen to really go into that? Like, no, no, no.
yeah, yeah,
What are my
yeah.
tools to move out of that, right? And to
Mhm,
depersonalize and recognize it's not me. There's nothing wrong with me.
mhm.
I didn't do anything wrong. It's just an experience I had, and now, how to move forward. So,
Yeah,
um, but again, like conversations like this, I'm totally into when it's for me, this is about bringing awareness to this for
yeah.
people. Does feel more solution focused to
Mhm,
me. Um,
yeah.
Again, of course, we have our stories, we have the trauma, we have the anger and the such, but this is part of the healing process. This is part of moving forward with that and trying to make sense of it all through having these types of conversations. And
Mhm.
that just feels really empowering to me, right? Moving out
Yeah.
of victim consciousness and like, okay, how do we take our power back in this, all of this?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's healing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that because I think we need to be careful of kind of where we get plugged in because not everything we connect ourselves into is feeding us. Some
Yeah.
places, some groups, some people, situations, we have outgrown that. Just
Yeah.
like in life, there's transitions, to infancy, toddler, and so on. You don't wear the same little tiny shoes as a baby, you as an adult, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I like that you shared that. It's, for people to keep looking, keep searching and find what works for you. Stick with it. And the victim mentality. Oh boy. I've dealt with that for so long.
Oh, me
And
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm at the place where I'm like, snap out of it. Come on. It's not a
Yeah.
guilt or shame thing on my behalf or for others. It's just that I've done the healing about it. And there's nothing else I can do about it other than to take what I've learned to have conversations like this, to
Yeah.
inspire and help people come out of the holes that they've digged for themselves.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
essentially why I open certain conversation and topics. That's it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and this is not to bypass, the very real, anger
Mhm.
and such that
Yeah.
is part of it, but finding helpful, ways to move that anger and process it and move through it. So all of the emotions, the experience is very real, but it's when we get stuck in that, like the blaming. I see that a lot, and I used to do that too. I blamed my family. I blamed my biological mother for my pain, right? And then when I started taking responsibility, it's like, yes, absolutely, all of that happened, and now what?
Yeah.
Do I just want to stay in that forever? I mean, sure, it's valid, but it's not serving me. So yeah, that's an important piece. Finding ways, healthy ways to move the anger because it is there and it still arises for me on occasion, right? And so, but again, now I have the tools to move through it and I don't have to attach to it. So
Mhm.
I certainly want to validate that everybody has, the emotions around all of this are very real, but there's healthy ways to move through it, right? And not get stuck in that blame and the anger. And yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Have you ever felt the pressure to be grateful? For being adopted. I've felt it, even not being connected to my family at all.
Wow. Um, no, no, that's interesting. No, I would not say that I've had that. Do you mean pressure from outside or outside sources or pressure from yourself?
Mm. I'm gonna put all of it in one.
Mhm.
There's different scenarios, obviously. I'm from a, poor third world country. That's what people say. Um, for those people who haven't been to Haiti, to who haven't seen the nicer parts of it, there's a lot of misconception. Oh,
Mhm.
she's from this poor third world country. She's getting rescued and saved. She should be grateful that she's not in there. It's just bypassing the
Okay.
emotional aspects of adoption.
Right. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. That to me, like it's like resilience when people
Yeah.
like, oh, they're so resilient. Kids are so resilient. Like that's just a way to bypass, it's a shortcut to really being with the person and their experience. So I understand what you're saying now. Absolutely. And I guess I've kind of done that to myself too. Oh, I should be grateful. Who knows? Like I said earlier, who knows what kind of situation it could have been. But yes, oh my
Mhm.
gosh. I was just listening to a podcast recently, and these people were talking about these like going into other countries that were, yes, poorer third world countries where they
Mhm.
didn't have the same resources that we do. And so they go in there and, you know, build schools or, put money into it or do all these things. And it's just like I am so torn on that because people think it's like, the kind of white savior thing, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
just go and decide what we think is best for these people and throw
Mhm.
money at the situation. And who knows what that's doing to this culture.
Yeah.
And, you know, I, I, that one really whacks me out. I don't know. I mean, of course, there's good that can come out of it. Of course, there's new opportunities that people could have,
Mhm.
but it's, I don't know. I don't know. I also trust
Mhm.
that things happen the way they're supposed to. So, um, but yeah, to think that we know what's best for people or any
Yeah.
people, regardless of what country they're in, if it's our own, if it's the next state over, if it's, the
Mhm.
people down the street. Like we just don't know, right? That is not for us to say.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that in. It's a really important piece. We
Mhm.
just don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what I've felt. And among many adoptees who may be feeling that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for mine, it's so complex. That's why it's taking me time to reprocess everything, to try
Yeah.
to go back and see different glimpses of how I can break it down to help people digest the experience and information. Because it was an international adoption. As soon as you add two countries, with two different legal systems, adoption processes,
Yeah.
different currencies, different costs, different language. Um, it's so different than domestic adoption.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah. 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 Very complex, very
Mhm.
layered.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know where to start to tell people about it.
Right?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm processing, but it's definitely hard.
Yeah, well, these conversations are important, and it is, oh, yeah, we really got to, I don't know if this is a word, but de-glamorize that experience for, you know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, what do you want people to get out of this amazing conversation and adoption in general?
awareness, again, just shining the light on these really extremely complex and challenging issues. And
Mhm.
yeah, blowing the lid off of the romanticism, the glamorization of adoption and the happy family fantasy, right? So and just being really sensitive to adoptees and what they're going through, and the parents that have adopted as well, right? To understand, how challenging this can all be. And so I think the more that people are aware and understand that, the more compassion and empathy we can have for for everyone, and yeah, because I think it goes on a lot more than people realize, right?
It sure
Yeah,
does. It
yeah,
sure does. Yeah, yeah. That's why, for the longest time, I didn't tell people I was adopted.
yeah,
And it's very different, obviously, for, and what's the word? Interracial adoption,
yeah. Oh
vice
gosh.
versa. For when kids are with white families, getting bullied at school,
Yeah,
name calling, that does happen.
yeah,
I remember, being stared at uh, by people. Why is she with white people? For
yeah,
me, I still don't look at color. Do I know color exists? Absolutely.
right.
It doesn't take away from what a person is and what they've experienced. As a child, we have different outlook on what society is getting ready to program us with.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
just adds, again, so many layers onto an already really challenging
It's
situation. Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. We could go on and on even deeper, but I'm looking forward to, working with you more and making change happen.
Yeah, yeah, let's definitely continue this conversation. And I thought also, as you were talking, another um takeaway here is, I just want to say to adoptees that are listening to this, like, you are, everything you're feeling and experiencing is totally valid and okay. And there are people out here that understand, and there are groups out there. There's and if you're interested in finding support groups or creating one for yourself, creating one on your own,
Mhm.
um, yeah, just be careful that you are connecting with others that are trying to lift you up and support you and help you to heal and feel whole and nourished versus adding to the problem by adding in more anger and blame and creating just more separation. You know, that's an important piece, I think, and part of the reason why sometimes we need to create these groups for ourselves, right? Create support groups and start a blog, you know, share your story, or a podcast, right? You know, but talk about it and find people that can support you in your process and
Mhm.
and validate you, right? Because it's real. It's real.
Mhm.
The pain is
Yeah,
real.
yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing. As we wrap up, can you tell people again where can they find you if they want to connect with you?
Yes, I'm at sacredsensualalchemy.com and I have a YouTube channel called Sacred Sensual Alchemy. I'm on Instagram, Sacred Sensual Alchemy. So yeah, all the things. Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Sadie, thank you so much for stepping in today, for showing up for many adoptees that are not ready to speak, and for those who have already spoken for those who are on their healing journey. Thank you for all you do, and I'm excited to continue this conversation.
Wonderful. Me too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.